This romantic story is taken from Dr. Asif Riaz Qadir's book Classical Romantic Stories of Pakistan. This book was published in March 2022 by Rudad Publications, Islamabad. Story of Mirza Sahiba. About 20 kilometers north of the city of Jang in the Punjab, Pakistan, was the town of Chadarsals, called Kiwa, headed by Sardar Kiwa Khan, a big landowner. The heroine of the story, Sahiba, was the daughter of the village chief. She had two brothers, Shamir Khan and Mir Khan, who were known for their courage and bravery in the surrounding areas. Danabad was a small village, on the bank of the river Ravi, 104 kilometers from Kiwa in the present tehsil of Jaranwala, district Faisalabad. It was inhabited by the Karal Huts, headed by Ibrahim Khan, who was a prominent landowner in the area. People used to consult him for decisions on their disputes and quarrels. Sardar Ibrahim's younger brother was Mayor Wanjal. The hero of the story, Mirza Haq, was his youngest son, who had a younger sister. Mirza was a handsome youth known throughout the region for his bravery. Sardar Kiwa Khan's real sister was married to Mayor Wanjal. Thus, Mirza and Sahiba were each other's cousins. Mirza was loved by everyone because he was the youngest of the siblings, which made him pampered and selfish in his childhood. One day, Mirza's father, after consulting his wife, sent him to study in the village of Sardar Kiwa Khan because the quality of education there was better than that in his village, and children from nearby villages also came to study there. Another sister of Sardar Kiwa Khan was also married in the same village. She was Mirza and Sahiba's aunt, whose name was Bibo. She had no children of her own, so she kept Mirza in her house instead of her brothers. Sardar Kiwa was also happy with Mirza's arrival, so he sent both the children, i.e., his nephew Mirza and his daughter, to study in the mosque. At that time, schooling was not as common as it is today, but children were educated in the madrasa attached to a mosque or a monastery. Both religious and worldly education was imparted here. The daily routine of Mirza and Sahiba was such that Sahiba would leave her house and stand outside in the street and shout for Mirza that it was time to go to school. She would not go to school without Mirza. Mirza would come out running after hearing the voice of Sahiba. He would rush out with a smile on his face. Mirza used to wait for this voice after waking up in the morning. Don't Mirza, give me my bag," Sahiba would say in an endearing tone. Mirza would look at Sahiba with loving eyes and then grab her bag and press it under his armpit. "But Mirza, why don't you let me carry my bag? You don't know? If I don't pick up your bag, I will never be able to go to the mosque. It's just an excuse to pick up your bag and go to study with you, otherwise, I don't like the lessons at all." Mirza would answer innocently, "But I say every day that you must read. I enjoy reading." Saying this, Sahiba wrapped her arms around Mirza's waist. "I am nervous to read from this Maulvi," Mirza said. "Why?" Sahiba asked. "I do not know why," Mirza replied, and at the same time said, "Well, if you say so, I will also read it, but I do not understand what Maulvi is teaching. And even if I understand, I don't remember. Then you tell me what to do. How can I enjoy my study?" They put their arms around each other's backs, talked sweetly, and walked to school with small steps. Mirza thought, "I wish this path should never end or the mosque itself should be far away." Both were of the same age. They were 11 or 12 years old, but they both seemed more promising and mature than their age. They reached the mosque. Sahiba took her bag from his hand. As soon as she reached the courtyard of the mosque, two boys came running towards her and tried to get the bag from Sahiba's hands. She snatched her bag from one of the boys, and proceeded with Mirza. The two boys looked at Sahiba with sad eyes and regretted their failure. When Sahiba and Mirza reached the school inside the mosque, Fatu and Maida walked towards the hujra, cursing each other. There was the sound of someone coughing. Sahiba leaned towards the courtyard. Maulvi Sahib, as usual, came towards her with a long rosary in his hand. Seeing the Maulvi coming, the Sahib asked all the children to sit quietly in their places, and the children stopped their mischiefs and sat down with their bags in front of them. Maulvi came and sat on a small platform. "Good boy, open the bag and repeat the lesson you learned yesterday." Hearing this, all the children get busy opening their bags. Sahiba also opened her bag but put a thick book aside, which picking up another book, opening it to read. When Maulvi's eyes fell on the thick book, he pointed to it and asked, "Sahiba, where did this big book come from? Which book is this?" Alif Layla respected Maulvi Sahib. This was given to me by Aunt Bibo. A great book. There are many interesting stories. Sometimes, you don't come to school, so I brought it with me that if you don't come I will read it. Saying this, she handed over the book to Maulvi Sahib. He turned the pages from different places and read a little and asked in surprise, "Can you read? Do you understand this because it is a very difficult book to read?" "I can understand the story, but I do not understand the meaning of many of its words." Then Maulvi looked at Mirza, who was sitting to the right of Sahiba. "Sahiba, get your partner to the habit of reading. See how quiet he is. Outside the mosque, he is very active and mischievous." "Yes sir, even today I have advised him to study." He replied that from today he will do so. "Oh Mirza, listen, if I see you sitting quietly like this tomorrow, I will send a message to your father so that he can settle you wisely. Why waste your time and mine in vain?" "Maulvi ji, you should wait one more week," Sahiba said. "I will go to my aunt's house and teach him. He is very sensible but has not yet developed the passion for reading." Hearing the words of Sahiba, Mirza raised his bowed neck and looked at Sahiba, but he looked down again, frightened by Maulvi's staring red embers. "Well, if you say so, I'll wait a few more days. O Mirza, open your ears and listen. From tomorrow, you will read your lesson first of all," students warned the Maulvi. After school, Sahiba went to her aunt's house and told her everything that Maulvi had said. Bibo had also urged Mirza many times for studies, but what Sahiba said today had a profound effect on Mirza's. "Your father will say that I didn't take care of you. In a couple of days he will take you back from here and I will not be able to show face to my sister and brother-in-law for the rest of my life. And auntie, my studies will also be finished," said Sahiba. "My mother has already said that now you have grown up, don't go to the mosque. I always say that Mirza is with me, then she agrees. After that, she will not agree at all." Mirza was deep in thought on hearing all this. He felt ashamed in his heart. More than embarrassment, he was saddened by the thought of separation from Sahiba and return to Danaabad. He was determined to study. Thinking this, he slowly raised his head. "Say it, son," the aunt said in an emotional tone. "I have had peace of mind since you came to my house. Study for me for another year so that I can show my face to my sister too." "All right aunt. Sahiba says that she would teach me. Please help me to read something. I will not let you to be embarrassed at all. Don't worry. I will study hard from today," Mirza promised his aunt. Shaken by love, Mirza made up for shortfall of the year in a month. Now Maulvi also patted Mirza's back several times in class. At first, he only liked one thing during the day: going to the mosque with Sahiba and coming back. Now his whole day was filled with good things. Auntie was also happy besides Maulvi and Sahiba. Sahiba used to come to his house every day. He used to memorize the lessons taught by Sahiba all day long, and while memorizing the lessons, he felt that Sahiba sitting next to him. He had always dreamed that he was carrying the bag of Sahiba and was counting the fingers of her hand wrapped around his waist. In this way, a unique joy would be instilled in his heart and a blossom of joy would shine in his eyes. But now he began to dream differently. Sahiba teaching him a lesson. Some books were running out, and at the end of the book, Sahiba looked into his bright eyes, holding his hand and say, "And what can I teach you? From head to toe you have read me." The words of the lesson from the fingers of Sahiba would begin to be absorbed in him and he would wake up, but he would close his eyes again, feeling that the awakening was worse than the dream. This was the sweetest year of Mirza's life. The desires of the day flickered in the form of stars at night. There was excitement in the heavens and the earth. Two innocent souls, hand in hand, were both entering the garden of their youth. Mirza's father found out that the boy was studying hard. One day he came to visit his son. Seeing him, a strange uneasiness arose in his heart. Now he should make a niche in the skills of the youth. He thought that there was no one like him in archery and horse riding. No enemy could raise his head. He consulted his sister-in-law Bibo, but she advised him to allow Mirza to continue his studies for another year. "No, Bibo." Wajal Karal turned his head and said, "He has studied a lot. Landlords have many enemies. Now, by the grace of God, his youth seems to be gaining strength and I will make him a swordsman, an archer, and a horseman." It was decided that Mirza would go back to Danaabad. Before returning to the village, Mirza asked Sahiba to give him a thick book and tell him stories of her choice so that he could go to the village and read them. Sahiba brought out a book of stories. After flipping through the pages for a while, she told a story, The Puppet of Love. It was the story of a princess. "Sahiba, you are reading as if this is your own story." Mirza was shocked at the ending of the story. "You are a darling, Mirza. Sahiba put her fingers on his chin and said in such a charming way that it could only belong to a girl who enters adolescence from childhood, intoxicated with love. "Sahiba, read another." "Sahiba," Mirza insisted. 1, 2, 3, one after another 4 stories were told to him by Sahiba. And then, not knowing what was going on, what thought came to her mind that she closed the book and put her hand on Mirza's shoulder and asked, "Hey Mirza, tell me, will you ever remember Sahiba?" Opening a window in a closed room dazzles the eyes like a flood of light. The boy's lips trembling from within made no response. "Then Mirza, you will forget me completely." She reached the bottom of his heart and asked him in a cursory way, "Sahiba, what can I forget about you?" At last, his lips moved. Sahiba looked at his lips. There was a slight tremor in them. He looked into her eyes. There was a thin line of water in them. Lest it explodes, Sahiba asked him again, "Tell me, then, what will you remember most about me?" Sahiba began to caress his hand with both her hands. "Your hand around my waist, teaching me a lesson." "No, it's not. The most important thing to ask is what dream you had last night? And you will never forget me like you used to make a face after hearing the answer." "No, Sahiba. To be honest, I don't know what I'm going to miss about you. But I know for sure that I will never forget you." Wanjal did not like Mirza and Sahiba talking like this. The father of Sahiba also felt that children were now growing up, so it was right for them to separate now. The next day, after breakfast, Wanjal Karal got on his horse. Mirza took all the steps with difficulty and stared at Sahiba. He got onto the horse behind his father. As soon as he reached Anandabad, Wanjal Karal entrusted Mirza to an expert teacher of horsemanship, archery, and swordsmanship. From his father's stable, a horse named Baki was chosen for his ride. Talking to the wind was the characteristic of that horse. Riding on it was not the job of every other array. But it was as if this horse had accepted Mirza at first sight. Years passed. The horse of his dreams became available to Mirza, but he kept wondering when the queen of his dreams would ride on this horse. A volume of Alif Layla was presented to him as a gift from Sahiba. The stories she told, the day he read the book himself, that night he became the hero of the story. Baki was with him. He used to fly in the air in the desire to get Sahiba. Many times it occurred to him to turn to Sahiba's hometown. Sahiba was now fully grown up. There were a lot of emotions in her life. She still went to Aunt Biba house every day. She also used to come to Anandabad to meet and talk to Mirza about Sahiba. How beautiful it turned out. Sahiba used to get intoxicated when she heard it from her aunt's tongue. "Auntie, didn't you say that he would come to Sile village for an hour?" "He is keen to come, but Khan, brother-in-law, is obsessed with the fact that there is no prince in the world like Mirza, no archer, no swordsman. That's why his teachers stick to him all the time." "Auntie, will he even remember that I was his teacher once?" "Sure, he picked up your book and brought it to me. You had given him a book. He was saying that even if he got a chance for an hour or a moment, he could read half a story every day. Let her tell you," he said. Ever since she heard Mirza's words from her aunt, her night's sleep flew away. She would stay up all night thinking that Mirza would look like this. If he came here, would still be able to put her hand around her waist? And if Mirza put his hand on her shoulder, what would happen to her? Her whole body trembled. When she fell asleep, Mirza would come and ride him on a horse and fly above the clouds. The marriage counseling of Sahiba began. Many people came up with the idea of marrying Sahiba with Mirza. Bibo once even told the mother of Sahiba that she would not find another boy like Mirza. The mother also liked this, and she also mentioned it to the father of Sahiba. But Kiwa Khan was a far-sighted man. "Oh simple woman, we have only one daughter. Why not adopt another big house through it? Wanjal's house is already ours. Chadar clan is equal to us. But they live in squalor. His son Tahir is also young. If this relationship materialized, then understand that the whole area would become ours." Hearing this advice from her father, Sahiba became very upset. She went to her aunt's house and cried a lot. "Auntie, go to Mirza and ask him to put pressure on his parents. From here, you and uncle will convince them of this, then, I hope, they will agree to this relationship." Bibo went to Anandabad to consult her sister and brother about the relationship. She knew her brother's habit. The brother-in-law was also very proud. "Let Kiwa Khan see the taste of Chadar's stew, Bibo." "I will not go there." Wanjal flatly refused. When Mirza heard about the marriage of Sahiba, he immediately set out his journey to Sile village on his horse, which was known as Baki and Neeli. However, a day later, his real sister Chatti was to be married. His mother, sister, and father explained a lot, but Mirza did not agree. He said, "I am in love with Sahiba, so my pride can never allow Sahiba to be associated with anyone else." Bibo persuaded Mirza to go and say for himself that he had the right to Sahiba first. "Dear, there is no room for negligence in this regard. The messenger is about to go to Chadar's house to fix the marriage day," said Bibo to Mirza. She further said that Sahiba was not even conscious of eating and drinking. Before Mirza left, his father, seeing that there was no other way, went to Mirza and told him that if he went, then he must be sure to return with Sahiba or else it would bring great dishonor. With those words, Wanjal gave his son his blessing to pursue his love. The condition of Sahiba was very strange. She met Mirza. She did not know how many aspirations she had kept in her heart, but now after meeting Mirza, she could not raise her hands or open her lips. Suddenly, her dreams were shattered. Mirza looked at her. It occurred to him to put his hand on her shoulder. But that was not the shoulder. His hand was no longer what he used to wrap around her waist every day. "Sahiba." That was all he could utter. "Mirza." She could say in the same answer. Taking the opportunity, Mirza spoke boldly with his uncle. "Uncle, I am your nephew. Now you make me your son too. I have played with Sahiba. We study together. It'd be unfair to marry Sahiba to someone else." "Son Mirza, I like it very much. If Sahiba had another sister, I would never have rejected your words. I have promised the marriage of Sahiba to Chadar's. I have to keep my promise. If Chadar became our relative, then no one else will dare to face us. You guys are already ours." Mirza said with a big claim, "Even now no one is there to confront you. Even when I'm alone, I feel the power of 11 within me. I'm sorry to break your heart. Since I have sent a messenger to them, towards Chadar's, I do not want to break my promise." The stubborn uncle ended the conversation. Mirza got up and went to his aunt's house and asked her to somehow arrange a meeting with Sahiba at her house. Years later, today he was waiting for Sahiba in the same house again. At that time, only his eyes were restless to see her, but today he did not know how much he was suffering for her. "Come on, Sahiba. At that time she was taller than me. Now she would hardly reach my shoulder. I will hide her into my heart from head to toe." And Sahiba came. As soon as he saw her, his heart began to pound in his chest. Even when she approached him, his lips could not open. Sahiba gently put her hands around his waist. Mirza also placed his shy hand on her shoulders, but was still shy to hold her in his arms. But the observation of Sahiba was something unique. There was a twinkle in her eye. The flying soul of Sahiba sitting on the eyelids was weighing the wings for the flight. The reflection of this desire was also seen in Mirza's eyes. Then, the bird flew from its place and got stuck in Mirza's arms. When the two embraced each other, no one was a stranger anymore. Not only the images could be seen in their eyes, the heartbeat could also be heard. It was not difficult to say anything anymore. "Mirza, what are you going to do now?" asked Sahiba. "You are mine. What you have assured today was lacking before. There is no one born to take you away from me. But there is an army of sons in the house of Chadar's. Even in these arms is the strength of the whole army." Mirza placed his arms on the shoulder of Sahiba. "But Mirza, you don't have to raise your hand against my brothers." The color of Sahiba turned pale. "No, Sahiba, they are also my brothers. Don't worry. With my arrows and horse, Baki, I will not get a chance to fight anyone and no one dares to fight me. Still, if you are scared of your parents' disgrace, tell me now." Mirza lifted his hand from her back. "They are doing the disgraceful stuff themselves. I just want none of them to be hurt because of me. The tree from which I sprouted like a bud, grew and fell in love with a prince like you. Let no harm be done to this tree by me," Sahiba explained. The next day, when it was heard in her ears that the messenger had settled her marriage with Chadar's, it was as if her wings were broken. Preparations for the wedding also began in her house. As the preparations progressed, Sahiba's heart went down and down. 15 days, 14 days, a week, 3 days. Now the wedding party was coming the very next day. The wedding party, Bharat, arrived. There were also several dancing women. The whole village was lost in the colorful rallies. On one side Sahiba was awake and on the other side was Biba, who was wandering around in a world of anxiety. Her eyes were tired as she watched Mirza's path. It was getting dark now. At that moment, a young man with his face covered came and tied his horse in the stable. Bibo came to life. Her husband had gone to watch the dancing party. Taking the guest inside, he hurriedly narrated the story of Sahiba and asked, "What is his intention now?" "Auntie, Tell her to be ready. At the first call of the rooster, my horse and I will be at her door and people will be sleeping unaware at that time." For Sahiba, every single moment was getting longer for centuries. If Mirza doesn't come, her dead body will be carried in the palanquin tomorrow. If Mirza doesn't come, or he wants to get rid of me, then for whom will I live? But if Mirza makes me his own, then I will also endure imprisonment. The trumpets sounded. Sahiba held her heart with both hands. Hi, Mirza hasn't come and she started thinking of ways to die. Bibo came and wrapped her in her arms. Hearing the news of the arrival of her beloved, instead of death, the hopes of life began to falter again. It was a moonlit night, almost past midnight. People went to their homes and fell asleep after watching the dance party. There was complete silence in the village after the day's activities. In this silence, Sahiba, lying on the bed, was waiting for someone. That is why she left the clothes he was wearing under the pretext of fatigue. She sat down at the sound of the horse's hooves and looked around. Everyone was asleep. The sleeping faces looked so good to her today. She let out a cold sigh. I wish I would never have to leave this house. Then, with her feet pressed down, she walked through the courtyard, opened the door, and stood against the wall. In an instant, the horse came to her and stopped. The rider, with his head covered, pulled one of his legs out of the stirrup. Sahiba put her foot in it. Leaning on the rider's outstretched hand, Sahiba grabbed the saddle and jumped up. To thank him silently for this great favor, she put her arms around the rider's waist. The rider also bowed her head and kissed her hands. After crossing the village boundary, the horse, Baki, started talking to the wind. Mirza's dream came true. After covering a short distance, Mirza remembered what promise he had made to Sahiba. Your brothers will not be harmed. But if they chase, they will have to fight. Thinking this, Mirza left the path of Dhananabad and turned in the other direction. As soon as the dawn broke, a lush green garden appeared in front of them. Mirza stopped in a clump of trees, took Sahiba down and hugged her. All doubts and suspicions were lost in the pleasure of meeting. Sahiba took the bow and arrows from Mirza's shoulder. However, Mirza cautiously put one of them in it. This arrow, this bow, this Baki, and this is my arm and you. Mirza kissed the face of Sahiba with love and said, Mirza, why did you stop here? Let's get home. Mirza replied, No, Sahiba, there will be a lot of trouble when we go home. Before I get entangled in them, let me fulfill my desire to embrace you to my heart. Forget the whole world for a moment. Oh Sahiba, my heart is full of pain, come and take away the pains of my grief and separation. Suddenly, the feet of Sahiba also began to slip from this earth. In the empty sky of love, she clung and put her arms around Mirza's neck. The one who knows the state of the heart is finally found. The sadness of years is gone. Mirza's soul has been freed from the shackles of such a grip. Sahiba, I am ready to pay the price for this short moment, even if I give my whole life. Put my head on your thigh, then look me in the eye from above. Mirza lay down. Turning his arms, he took Sahiba into his circle. The head of Sahiba would sometimes bow automatically and sometimes Mirza would bow to her. Now she began to miss home. Shocked at the slightest murmur, she wanted to wake Mirza. Although this rattle was her delusion. But what if they get here after getting information from somewhere? He counted the arrows. There were more than 12. She waved her hand at the bow. It was a very cruel bow. I am missing my brothers. Yes, Mirza has given me the word. She breathed a sigh of relief. But if they come and ride to this place, how will Mirza be able to fulfill his promise? They will be more in number. With arrows, he can kill many. Sahiba gently woke Mirza and said, Get up, let's go somewhere else. But Mirza was lost in a sweet dream. Has anyone come? He asked. But when he heard the answer, no, he fell asleep again. If my brothers arrive, all will be killed. Slowly, placing the beloved's head below her thighs, she lifted the quiver and leaned on the back of acacia tree, on a high branch far away, and came back to her beloved's head again on her thigh. And now if they killed unarmed Mirza, then? The heart of Sahiba trembled at the thought. I will stand between the two. The sword will not touch Mirza until they kill me. I don't want their death, so how can they want my death? This thought calmed her heart to some extent. She kissed his forehead. In so doing she heard the sound of horses. Here they are. She recognized her younger brother. He was not given any explanation in a hurry. She shook Mirza and woke him up and said, Get up, get on the Baki, and run away. As soon as he got up in a hurry, Mirza shouted, Bo! Hey, My bow. Hey, my bow. It was on my shoulder. Hey, I won't shoot. The shouting of an arrow is enough to avert disaster. Where's my bow? Oh, my bow. Mirza, forgive me, forgive me. Compassion for the brethren compelled me to do so, and I kept the bow out of your reach. You can't use them anymore. They are very close to us. Now just get on the horse. No, Sahiba, I can't run away without you. Saying this, Mirza ran and brought down the sword hanging from the saddle. Sahiba, it is now certain that they will win. However, if any of your brothers are hurt, forgive me, but I will die while competing. Sahiba hugged him. Mirza removed her to one side and said, Why would they kill you? Two will come instead of one to separate you from me, but they will cross the dagger through my chest. Get out of here, Sahiba, now they have arrived at my head. Let me meet my destiny. Mirza brandished his sword. 7 men dismounted from their horses. The swords began to shine. But Sahiba ran and stood in the middle. Oh, my brothers. Now neither I nor Mirza can run away. Don't be in a hurry, my brothers. I am your real sister. We will not listen to anyone. We have surrounded our thief. This was not the voice of the brothers of Sahiba, and she did not recognize him. If she hadn't run away, he would be her husband today. That is, Tahir. You have shown great loyalty by running away with Mirza, said the younger brother. What do you want to say? Tell me, said the elder brother. We will not leave him alive. He is our thief. Tahir could not bear it again, and from a distance, aimed at Mirza's stomach. He aimed his sword at him with all his might. The target missed and Mirza's blood dripped on it. Mirza roared like a lion. Seeing this, everyone fell on him. Then what? The swords began to rattle. Mirza himself was a master of the sword. He stopped all attacks. Screaming Sahiba, sometimes she would fall at the feet of her brothers, sometimes she would hold hands, and sometimes she would say, No, my brothers. Do not do this. I am your sinner, so I am. Brothers, forgive him only for the sake of your only sister. No one listened to her pleadings in the shadows of swords. Mirza's arms finally became paralyzed as he stopped the swords of 6 rivals in a row. He no longer dared to stop further attacks. Sometimes there was a spurt of blood from the arms, and sometimes there was a crack on the shoulder. Gradually, Mirza's condition could not be seen by Sahiba. She repeatedly intervened. Hold it tightly, and a brother took in the grip of his arms. With every cut on Mirza's body, the soul of Sahiba would cringe. At last, such a deep blow fell on Mirza's chest that he fell there and the sword slipped from his hand. Seeing that, strength of a tiger suddenly came into the body of Sahiba. Freed from her brother's clutches, she stood in front of Mirza. She held Mirza's sword firmly in her hands. Don't try to come near me now. I am now mad instead of Sahiba. You have killed Mirza. He is now a few moments' guest. Let me apologize. In this world of sorrow and grief, who would not be shocked at such courage? They all moved away. Sahiba removed the blood-stained patch from Mirza's forehead, wiped the blood with a handkerchief, wiped his eyes, and kissed his forehead, and said, Mirza. Yes, Sahiba. Forgive me. Why are you apologizing? I have received the full value of my life. An angel of death has just descended. I could not give you anything but the cause of your death. No, you have made me immortal, Sahiba. Mirza, can you keep your eyes open for a moment? Even though they are closing, again and again, they will always be open if you want, provided you hold my hand in yours. Sahiba raised his hands, kissed them, and said, I want to sacrifice myself for you, Mirza, so that you too can see with your own eyes. Don't think that my brother was dearer to me than you. However, it was my nature to prefer the happiness of others to my happiness that became your killer. Yes, I am still yours and no one can separate me from you.